All right, cool. Now that the recording has actually started, so
So now it's not a good time to fuck around and find out.
now is a less good time to fuck around and find out. All right, excellent gang. Welcome to the final lesson of the tournament Reeving course. Today's lesson is going to be about tournament organization. Shing. What do you mean by that, you ask? Well, let me tell you what the heck I mean by that. So, tournament organization. This is how you actually run a tournament. Because just being able to reeve is not the only skill that you need when you are working with tournaments. Because you have to actually, have a tournament to reeve. So, this is going to be the last one of the tournament reeving course. Will there still be classes in the future? I hear you all ask, patiently awaiting. The answer is yes, there will be. The next one's going to be a course and series about battle game reeving. Ooh, sparkle, sparkle. And build up to the Battle Masters Crucible TM. That's going to be happening on May 17th. So it'll be a really good way to get yourselves prepared for that. However, there will also still be regular other reeving courses because you don't just get to sit in on a couple silly little classes and go, all right, I'm now the perfect reeve. There are more things to continue afterwards. For example, shadow your reeves at this upcoming event, literally on Friday and Saturday. This Friday and Saturday, there's going to be tournaments. Do you want to learn how to reeve? Walk up to me. Tell me you want to shadow. You can shadow me or one of the other experienced reeves that is reeving said tournaments. Do you want to learn how to scorekeep? You can do that. It's really simple, I promise. Do you want to learn how we actually run the tournaments? Well, you're about to today, and if you want to actually try and help putting it into practice, then talk to me, and we do that. But today, we're going to go ahead and start with the stuff you have to do before the tournament. So, how do you actually get this thing going? This applies whether you're at a local level or at a kingdom level. So let's say you're your park's like champion or Geobar, or you're just a person who wants a tournament to happen. And you go, hey, I want to experience a tournament. For example, let's look at one of the ones that's going to happen this weekend on Friday. We're having an open and closed tournament on Friday. All right. So what does that mean? I'm going to go ahead and screen share this. Yeah. No, not that one. I'm going to go ahead and screen share this one. Yes. And I'm going to pull up the Facebook. And I'm going to show y'all the post that I made about the tournaments. So one of the most important things about a tournament is letting people know a tournament is even happening in the first place. Where the heck... Okay, there it is. No. Where the heck... There we go. All right. So, when you're setting up a tournament, the first thing to do is decide, hey, we're going to have a tournament this day. So, for this upcoming event on the Friday, it was decided that there will be an early bird tournament at 4 p.m. and a Valkyrie at 6 p.m. Awesome, cool. So let's just focus on the early bird tournament for purposes of this example. The first thing I do is go, hey, we are having a tournament. This is what the tournament's called, and this is when the tournament starts. Excellent, cool. Now, anyone who's interested in participating has the bare minimum information of, oh, I know what tournament to ask for, and I know what time it's at. Sweet. Now, you're going to want to go ahead and look at the format of the tournament. All right, cool. So this is where you lay out the information for how the tournament's going to be run. So people don't just walk up and go, what are we doing today? They actually get to know, all right, I have all the details beforehand. So for example, the early bird, open and closed Iron Warrior, 4 p.m. If you've never participated in a tournament like this before, or any tournament at all, you might go, what the heck does any of that even mean in the first place? That's when I go, all right, cool. The earlier bird Iron Warrior will consist of two 15 to 20 minute, depending on the number of entrants, Iron Warriors. So I guess I probably should have also clarified what an Iron Warrior format is, but for intents and purposes, we're going to assume everyone knows what an Iron Warrior is. It's a format where there's two rings. People fight in a ring. They Whoever wins stays in the ring. Their wounds get refreshed, so they start the next fight brand new. And play continues until time is out. Cool. Quite simple. The first Iron Warrior will be open category, any weapon set allowed. That's pretty self-explanatory right there. But still, clarifying. If anyone doesn't know what open category means, now they know. Cool. I can use any weapon set I want. Awesome. Afterwards, there will be a closed category Iron Warrior, where you must use a weapon set that is different from what you used in open. This is something that's not as common. So someone might go, okay, well, what the heck does that mean? So I go, example, if you fought with a medium shield and a short sword in open category, you may not use that set again in closed. You may switch to small shield and short sword, Florentine, great weapon, etc. Contestants are always allowed at least one single short. So for example, if you only have a single short, you can still participate in both categories. You just, you would use single short and open, single short and closed. It's not going to be, all right, single short, and now you have to go down to a dagger and closed. You always get at least that. So now people know, all right, cool. Those are how this is how each set of the Iron Warriors are run. Cool. Once both Iron Warriors are concluded, brackets for top 8 will be held for first open and then closed. You must use the same weapon set you used in the Iron Warriors in the brackets. Cool. So all the information that is needed for people to come to this tournament prepared is there in the post. If there's additional small questions, like if someone hasn't been in an Iron Warrior and they go, how does an Iron Warrior work? That little blurb I just said at the beginning where I was explaining it, cool. I let them know exactly how an Iron Warrior works. Another thing that you will have to set up beforehand is, for example, if someone Simo's in the ring, what happens? Before it used to be you get one, some people would do, you get one reset, and then if you Simo again, they're both out. Recently, a lot of us have been doing if you Simo once, both fighters are out, 2 fighters in, which is most likely what I'm going to be doing for both of these tournaments. But that's also something you can kind of play by ear day of, but once you make a decision, that's the decision. That is what's happening. Should not go around changing the rules back and forth, because it'll just lead to more confusion for both you and your Reeves. So now that we've decided, cool, what tournament are we running? What is the format of said tournament? That's when you go to the actual day of. So what do you need to do the day of? One of the most important things is making sure everyone participating has safe weapons that they can use to participate in said tournaments. Because obviously, if someone strolls up to the tournament and they go, I'm going to fight with these 2 swords I made, yippee! And their 2 swords are horrifically illegal, then those should not be allowed in the tournament or on the field in general. So you gotta be familiar with checking weapons. How do you do that, you ask? This is where I hand you off to one of SoCR's newest members, Mr. Fert the Eager.
Can you folks hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Hi.
Hello.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, I think that there is a big question mark around how weapons checks happen throughout most events, because you need to kind of have them structured. But it is very true that you don't want somebody just coming onto your tournament with 2 swords that haven't been checked. That is going to probably end up not well for both fighters. One, somebody will feel guilty. I think most of us, when we're fighting, unless it's our friends and we're being coy, don't mind somebody getting a little hit on the head. But when you hit a stranger on the head, it's really bad, right? You really only can ever, you shouldn't hurt anybody, but you really can only ever know somebody's okay with their reaction through years of fighting them. But when you fight a stranger in a tournament, that's a no. That's absolutely not allowed. So weapons check typically happens in the beginning of an event day. As per the ROP, it happens in the beginning of the day, like the event itself. So that may be a fighter's practice or typically your park day. But in events, it's going to happen before anything can perspire on the field. Anything can happen on the field. So that's always going to be the case. It's part of the ROP, or the rules of play. It's very much stated there. So we'll take a look at what AmpCard has today. But before we go any further, for the folks that haven't met me, my name is Fert the Eager. I'm primarily a Belagar fighter. I'm a cross gamer, of course. I've been doing AmpCard since July 28 of 2024. So I have not hit my year mark of being an AmpCard player or fighter. And I came back to Boffer Sports about a year ago. Actually, Rum Wars was last week, which was the first event I went to back in 2024, which is around April. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to go over kind of what AmpGuard has as a definition of what you would be doing for weapons check. And so I'll let folks jump in. I'm going to pull up a screenshot because this is straight out of the ROP. And I know it's kind of boring. I know it's kind of annoying to look at this when you're thinking about weapons check. Like, oh, where is it? So it's on page 18 of V863 SAPI. So that's where you can find it. I use the changes version, but there's no changes to the equipment checking. But this is what we want to look at. And so when it comes to, and I hear people coming in, so if you're not looking at the screen, know that weapons check is to make sure that safety is incorporated into the game whenever you're fighting. So it means that in a typical fashion, you get your weapons checked before they are put on the field, and that it goes through kind of a rigorous process in most buffer sports. AmpGuard is included in that. The details don't show here, but whenever you see folks doing weapons checking in any events, it's going through a process. You typically have an experienced individual that's done it before at either a kingdom level or a park level, and they're going through a set of rules that they have either in their head or they're following this. For AmpGuard, weapons, shields, and armor are what's here. If you scroll down, you get a little more, but not about checking them, right? This is the process that they want you to follow. As part of a Belagar fighter, we have also some rules. And so for most folks that you talk to, they either say, I'm bringing DAG or Bell style checking, or I'm incorporating rules from different games because safety is number one. So it's better to be more rigorous in that process. And so weapons checking happens in the beginning, but it can happen throughout the day as well. That's another point to make, always to make that weapons, if you feel a weapon is hitting too hard, you should also tell a Reeve. And then finally, weapons check is also about preparation, where anybody that is coming to an event, and I see that there's several of us here that have been to several events and have been in the game for a long time, you know that you want to make sure your weapons are field legal before you go into a weekend event, because it may break. You may have a weapon that fails on foam or on tip, or your pommel's been beat up and it moves around too much. And so that's typically what's going to happen in an event. It's just going to get used more. So you want to make sure your stuff is in good condition and repaired well. And that includes your armor as well. If you have armor that it's no sharp edges, nothing's falling off of you. That also includes shields. You know, you have a strap and maybe it's hurting your knuckles because the bolts are maybe moved around, which I heard recently, or you know, it's shaking a little bit too much on your punch, or the foam is coming off, because there's usually a rim around of foam around your shield to have the ends of it okay. The edge is what they call it. Maybe that's coming off. You need to tape it down. And then finally, weapons, right? So I have weapons here like a common sword, right? So you have a pommel, you have a handle. There's strike legal, which has a definition. We don't have to go over that. And then there's the tip of it, right? And so this is a classic bat in AmpGuard, and it's AmpGuard weighted. It's not like 4 or anything. I heard somebody say they have a 4. That's wild. Mine's just like 8. Everything's 8 that I use. Or you have a great weapon, right? This is, you know, a very long... I'm a red fighter, so I love great weapons. Or you have a shield, right? This is a strap shield, or this is a... Yeah, it's like you strap it on. A lot of folks and AmpGuard will use these as well. But in Belagar we'll use them certainly like strapped around our shoulder. And then, of course, like a punch. So that doesn't include a lot of stuff is missing from, right? That things that I showed you are really on this screenshot that I'm sharing. But it doesn't include kind of 2 things. One, the thought process, which is above. It's somewhere else in the ROP. They talk about it, weapon safety. But it also doesn't include some of the projectiles and things you're looking for. That is scattered throughout the document. And it's just, you know, it's part of what you need to remember as a Reeve or a champion, is that you have to go to different places. You know, there's certain guides and certain things you can use, but typically you kind of have to go through them, and that's why it's good to have an experienced person. But arrows have their own process, right? And so it's important to note that there's resources out there for everyone to start checking weapons. And so I will, right now in chat, I will post some of those resources, which I think are crucial to making sure you get a good process for your own park. I posted them in chat. And that's EasyGuard weapons and the AmpGuard wiki. AmpGuard wiki can be outdated sometimes, but EasyGuard is really great. If you haven't used EasyGuard.ca, it's one of the best resources out there for the AmpGuard community. Highly recommend it. And if anybody can click on that and then look at weapon safety, I believe. If you click on that and you look at weapon safety, I'll put it on screen here. If you look at weapon and you click on weapon safety, it gives you like a little blurb about kind of what I said. So if you ever want to talk to anybody, but look at this, it gives you like ammunition and it tells you kind of a breakdown of what an arrow is. Or if you needed to look at, let's say, what constitutes a grate, you can look at that. And so a great resource. I think everyone should. Anybody that's doing weapons check should consider this like their first option. Of what they're going through. And then finally, when it comes to folks that are interested in weapons checking, or anybody that wants to do like weapons checking themselves, right? We have volunteer slots open, and I just posted on the Facebook, and I'll post it in the Discord soon. We're calling for volunteers to join our ranks during the event. And we also have a couple of, I would say, like mantras. Right, so I, along with Rain, from Merc Bottom, so us together, we make the co-host of weapons checking, and we have our little kind of ideals, and these ideals really come from the ROP, but they're just made plain for everyone. So when we were running weapons check, know that this is the mantra that we're following, the ideals that we're following. Some folks may agree with some of them, some folks may not, but this is how we're blending both games together and making sure that folks are going to be safe during our event. And certainly a big proponent of folks getting on the same page before you do weapons check. Which is why we're saying experience, right? Which is why we don't want somebody that's like, I don't know how to do weapons check, because the rules are very important, but along with that, the thought process. So you don't let things pass. And then finally, there's gear. I only have this one as a screenshot, but there's things that you can use for weapons check. And so anybody's like, don't I need to have gear? It's like, we'll have that provided. The mantra is the big thing, right? If you're a weapons checker, if you've done weapon checking before and you can assist, look at our Facebook and kind of see what's inside of that post. It gives us the time slots and the volunteers that we need. I think I had all my talking points. This is everything before, but you'll notice that it happened throughout the week. The weekend. Ooh, my sword fell. It happened throughout the weekend, and so is there any questions? Anything? I know we have some pretty experienced weapons checkers in the chat. If anybody wants to add anything that they felt like was missed, or if we want to go over anything specific, let me know.
I just wanted to share that Fert really has fucking knocked it out of the park with this weapon checking thing he's had set up. He is graciously giving me the title of co weapons checker, but really he deserves all the credit. He's done 99% of the work. I'll be checking weapons, but he's done all the prep work. So if you're considering that for like awards or whatever, please focus on Fert.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Rain, do you have any clarifications that you wanted to give to based on some of the stuff you've seen in some of the guides? So we do have a guide. We're gonna give weapon checkers a join. They're gonna be like a little guide. We're gonna give you a link. Anything? I tried to hit all the points on that. But
I think you're very, very thorough with it. I think it'll be more than enough for what we'll need for the event.
I think, and honestly, thorough is a misnomer. It's methodical, I think is the term that I would use, because you hit every point. You're being
I
super
appreciate that.
modest, saying, I think I hit everything. Dude, you nailed every single point and defined it and then wrapped it right back around as a gift for me. I mean, so, no, that was phenomenal work. Um, ex- way more than I expected, for sure. Way, way, way more. So, you're killing it.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I see a question. Do you folks use a ruler for measurements or something? So I'll share another little screenshot. Let me see if I can get a little screenshot of this because I really don't want to like share the whole thing because then people are gonna be like, "Well, I have the link now," which I don't want the link to go out. But we have measuring tape typically, and there's like a set of tools that you use. So any weapons checker out there will tell you usually use a fabric, something you measure fabric with, so that it can contort, not contort, but it can go around weapons that maybe have a beveled edge. And so that's the kind of thing you use. I have a scale, like a digital scale, that I use for weight. In our game, I don't think it has any effect, but in Belgarth, it absolutely does. 12 ounces, 24 ounces, maximum for javies, stuff like that. So that's some of the equipment we use. And then finally, bow poundage checkers. One of the things that people forget about for checking weapons is how you tag them. Tagging is something that gets forgotten about, especially in the 2-day event, which ours is going to be a Friday, which is looking awesome for weather. I'm excited. And then Saturday, I probably shouldn't have said that, damn it. Now I've jinxed it. A Saturday, we want to check those arrows, right? So arrows is a big one, right? People get hit in the face. They have a propensity to hit people in the face just because of the way we're fighting. Archers are aiming for a chest. They want to get you out of the game. And so you typically mark them with something. And so flagging, they call it flagging. A lot of the times flagging tape, flagging stickers. And so that's also another piece of equipment that you'll see typically brought into the fold when it comes to all of the weapons checking process, as it were. So yeah, we do have a ruler. We absolutely have a ruler, and we use. I'm hoping that's what you meant. Let me see if I can get there for us. So here's like a common list. You got flagging tape, the template that I showed, a poundage checker, a team of Reeves, and some measuring tape. And it's typically the cloth one.
And the entire weapon checking team is going to be outfitted with a champion checking tool that has the measurements of 2.5 strike zone, the 2-inch pummel, all the little measurements that they need to figure out for the armor and stuff like that. So that's already created and packaged and ready to go. It's going to be delivered to them at the gate or wherever they're at once the event starts. So that's another thing that the team has been able to put together and package together, because I know we've had some events where we've done the eye socket check. I think has been the 2.5. Just put in your eye. Seems
Yeah.
safe. Not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've done it too, especially at Park. But I think we're all trying to raise that standard and make sure we're falling into that ROP and safety at the end of the day. Like his number one rule he listed on there was what? Be safe. So we're taking that advanced step, and those are checkers for the KGMR and champion K champion to carry and keep using at all the events just to keep us all secure and safe. So I'm sure what you're going to see out this weekend on this Friday, Saturday, Sunday is not going to be what you have seen before. And I'm even talking about when I was KGMR. So these guys are going above and beyond. So I'm excited because we're doing it in all platforms, battle games, tourneys, everything is kind of getting up to the higher echelon that it should be for the people and for the kingdom.
Thank you, Krewl'Sol. And I don't know. I didn't see any other questions, and I know we got a timer here. I think I'm gonna take that as no more additional questions, and then I'll see
that
folks.
was my question. You guys did a pretty good job explaining. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We'll see folks at Kingdom. We'll have some lines set up. We'll have some signs set up. If you want to be a volunteer, just reach out. And then finally, we look forward to a safe one. You know, our responsibility is to be your second line. You are the first line. You as a fighter are the first line. You take care of your gear. It's your gear. We try to be that second line to make sure it doesn't go onto the battlefield, nothing slips through, and that folks are generally having a good time. You know, Apcard is about fun, and so we should keep it that way.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Once again, everyone, Fert the Eager. Let's give him a round of applause. Pull out that. Boom. All right. So, obviously, weapon checking is one of the biggest things before tournament, and even before anyone takes the field in general. Because I know that all the time at Park, you probably check your weapons every so often, but you walk up to Park, you're like, I've been fighting with the sword for 3 weeks, it's been fine, and then maybe you just go ahead and start swinging. Realistically, everyone should be checking their equipment consistently to make sure. But still gotta check it before tournaments or battle games start, because that's when it's, alright, this might have been fine at your Park if no one maybe knew that, or if everyone was cool with how this weapon felt, but maybe it was a little dubious. There are some things where it's like, alright, cool, we're fine with it at local, but you gotta fix that before Kingdom, like if your pommel's super wiggly or whatever. But obviously, keeping the weapon checking in mind is also one of the most time-consuming things. So that's something that's very important. Before every tournament, you have to make sure that you have an appropriate amount of time for people to get their weapons checked. Whether that's with the method of, you know, having slots like what Fert is doing with the weapon, like what Fert and Rain are doing this upcoming weekend with the time slots for weapon checks. And also making sure there's actually like a distinct cutoff for, okay, we are no longer doing the weapon checks, we are only setting up for the tournament now, which is where I get into registrations for tournaments. Registration realistically should be the easiest part for a player, where it's just cool. I sign up my name on a list, I look at what number I sign my name up next to. That is my number for this tournament. Using the number system is a lot easier, in my opinion, than going by names, because especially at a Kingdom event, you might not know everyone's names, especially if your scorekeeper is newer to the game and also just hasn't met everyone. There's a lot of fumbling between, oh, okay, well, Elidibus just called out his name. Where was he on my list of people? Because it's not necessarily that I don't know the person's name who just won. I don't know where in my list of names they are, because it's probably not alphabetized. So
Why am I in trouble?
your name was the first one that came to my mind. How dare I? But when Elidibus wins a match and he shouts out, Elidibus, and then I look at my sheet, I'm like, there's 20 names on here, where is his name? That's more stress on the scorekeeper than there needs to be. So for registrations, it's really simple. You make a list with a bunch of numbers. You tell everyone, hey, write your name on the list, you're signed up for the tournament. Awesome. And then whatever number their name is next to, that's their number for the whole tournament. So, for example, Elidibus signs up, and he's number 5 for the tournament. So, whenever he wins a fight, he will yell the number 5, so my scorekeeper can go, excellent, put a tally mark next to 5, they have received a point. Before a tournament, it is important to have those registrations readily available for people, and also making sure you have a clear cutoff time so people know, hey, you're not allowed to register after this point. The tournament registration is closed. We are starting with everyone we have. Because the more you just keep letting people join, the longer it takes for you to get the tournament going. Thankfully, with the number system, it's quite easy to add someone in if you're like, okay, hard start at 4, but if you're jumping in late, come up to me, the Reeve. I give you a number. You can get in line as long as your weapons have already been checked and cleared. Obviously, if I'm adding on a new name to a list, then I have to go, all right, cool. Cookie signed up late for this tournament. Hey, scorekeepers, add the name Cookie to your sheet so you don't have to write down Cookie and then the new, like his new total when he jumps in. But if I hand my scorekeepers like, all right, here's a list of 30, here's 30 numbers. We only have 22 people right now. If other people jump in and they shot 23, put a mark next to 23. It makes it really easy to add late covers if that's something you're allowing in your tournament. So now that we've covered registrations and weapon check, there's also that other important thing where you have to set up the actual spot that fighters are fighting in. So if we go ahead and revisit that silly little, oh no, I closed the tab. No. I didn't close the tab. I'm going insane. There it is. Okay. If we open up our silly little boop. If we go back to this, where we're seeing, all right, cool. I'm setting up my tournament. All right. 2 Iron Warriors. I have to leave space for 2 Iron Warriors. All right. So that means I need 2 rings. Excellent. How big are those rings going to be? Well, that's when I look at the format I'm having. So I'm having an open and closed category Iron Warrior. So that means people are going to be allowed to walk into the ring with great weapons. All right, cool. If I'm allowing people to walk into the ring with great weapons, then the ring needs to be large enough to accommodate a great weapon. Which, like, going by the rules of play, if we literally look up great weapon and we go down to the requirements for it, a great weapon is greater than 48 inches. Realistically speaking, it's going to be a longer weapon, so I can't have the same size ring as if I was running a tournament with just a single short sword for each contestant. Because then if, let's say, I have 2 people with polearms in my ring, I need a pretty big ring. So when I'm setting up this tournament, I'm going to go, okay, cool. Instead of maybe just like a 20-foot big ring, I might expand it to 30. General good rule of thumb is that if a fighter's in the ring with their weapon, they should be able to hold it like around them in a circle and not bump into their opponent or the wall. So that should give you a good general estimate of how big a ring should be. And of course, if you're ever curious, like, okay, well, how big do I really need this ring to be? Just bring a measuring tape. Go up, like, grab a polearm, be like, all right, cool, this polearm's, like, big. People are going to be using stuff like this in my tournament, so I need to make sure my ring is, like, at least 25 to 30 feet. Cool. I'm going to literally measure it out, so that way not mid-round someone walks in and the ring is smaller than I thought it was. Measuring tape is your friend. So after you've set up, like, the rings themselves, we love to do this at Falling Fire. I believe we do this on most tournament fields, where sweep through the ring, make sure there's nothing, like, dangerous in there. For example, if there's like a really big rock, really big sticks, or the things like giant ant mound, don't put your ring where there's a giant bunch of ant mounds. Moving around, make sure that the ring itself is safe for fighters to participate in. If there are things where it's like, okay guys, the ring is like, there's not a lot of grass, there's a lot of dirt, let people know beforehand, like, hey, the floor might be a little slippy. You might kick up some dirt. Cool. Let people know of any potential different environmental settings that they might be experiencing in the rings. Making sure you have your hydration station set up also relatively nearby the tournament. Making sure people have a source of water so people aren't passing out in this godforsaken Florida heat. Making sure that everything around the tournament is safe. Cool. Awesome. So now we've covered most of the pre-tournament stuff, but then there's still that other most important thing. Acquiring Reeves for your tournament. So if you'll notice, the very top of this post, there's a lovely thing here that says, if you're available to Reeve or score cape for either tournament, please let me know or comment your availability. This is only one of many Reeve calls that have gone out for this mid-rain event that's coming up. Because, obviously, to make these tournaments and battle games run, there needs to be a team of Reeves, people running the tournaments, so that way it actually gets to happen. So, the best rule of thumb is, for every ring you have, or for every fight that would be ongoing in your tournament, have at least 2 Reeves, and have a scorekeeper. So, for example, for this 2-ring Iron Warrior tournament, I'm going to need 4 Reeves, at minimum, and 2 scorekeepers. So how do I organize my Reeves and scorekeepers? Well, that's pretty easy. You get volunteers. As someone running the tournament, you might also want a couple extra roles. For example, if you are running a tournament and there's going to be a lot of people, like let's say you're running a tournament with 3 rings, what might be easier is having someone direct the line for you. So if you have another volunteer, you can have them organize, like, hey, when this fight is done, you go to red ring. So literally the next person in line, it's like, all right, one person, go to the red ring. You go to the green ring. You go to the blue ring. So that way people are keeping the line flowing. So that's another like supplemental role that you'll see oftentimes in a tournament. But at minimum, you're gonna need at least 2 scorekeepers per ring. You're gonna need, so 2 Reeves per ring, 1 scorekeeper, and then in some cases you'll also need someone directing the line. In most cases, it just makes the tournament run smoother, because we all know the pain of sitting in a tournament and waiting in line for so long because for some reason the person in front of you didn't realize that the fight ended like 10 seconds ago and is still standing there like la-di-da-di-da and watching the other ring when the other opponent is waiting for their next fighter. So once you have all of your volunteers organized, that's when you set the expectation with them of, cool, this is how the tournament's gonna run. So, for example, we know those lovely Reeving styles that we covered, like passive Reeving, active Reeving, somewhere in between. That's when you set up the expectation with your Reeves beforehand. Like, okay, cool. We're going to start out as, like, let's say, a passive Reeving style, where if there's something blatant, you give the fighter the option to be honorable before you question them, but keep it kind of more lax. And then if, let's say, we're using the 3 strikes you're out mechanic, like, cool, as players are showing that they might have a problematic shot, like problematic shot recognition, okay, cool. This is when you tell your Reeves, all right, you're starting out as passive. As you notice things with the 3 strikes you're out method, start increasing the intensity of your Reeving. So, prompting with questions more often, or actively calling the things that you see rather than letting the players make their call initially. If it gets to a point where, you know, there's a player and you're like, hey, red card, what the heck is happening here? Making sure you're calling out things. You gotta set the precedent with your Reeves beforehand so they know, okay, cool, this is how I should be Reeving this fight. I'm not gonna go in and tell all my Reeves, you specifically are gonna be a passive Reeve, but you will be active, and you guys will Reeve 2 rings entirely differently, so then afterwards people will be complaining that the Reeves in each rings weren't even on the same page. Everyone's gotta be on the same page so the thing runs nice and smoothly. So, that's a really good thing to do. Also checking in with your Reeves intermittently throughout. Like, hey, is there anyone you've noticed who's been problematic? XYZ, relay it to the other Reeves. Cool, awesome. Because obviously it's hard for them to, like, walk over to the other Reeve while Reeving and go, yo, this person's being problematic. And I'm not going to shout across the field like, yo, Krewl'Sol's sloughing all of his shots right now. Keep an eye on him. Because that's just not cool. But, this is where it's good to have, like, that person who's maybe running the line or running around between your Reeves, like, communicating information. So they know, and they're in the loop for when things happen. And then also, organizing your scorekeepers. Scorekeeping is the one that's, like, you're going to scorekeep the same way in pretty much every tournament that you run, in the sense of you're still just writing down tallies, but making sure your scorekeepers know beforehand, like, hey, if someone is fighting, and, like, make sure you're marking down the tallies and marking where their streaks end. Because I remember one of the first times I was scorekeeping, like, I think the first time I ever scorekept, no one told me about the streak thing, and I almost messed that up before I was like, am I still supposed to be counting, like, how many times they get it in a row? Because I think Goose was dominating a local tournament as per usual, and he's getting, like, 8 people in a row, and I was like, am I supposed to be keeping track of that? And then they go, yes, oh my god, yeah, that's really important. And I go, oh, good heavens. Making sure your scorekeepers are aware of the job required of them, what ring they're watching, etc. And also, if you wanted your scorekeepers to be also, like, lightly pitching in with the Reeves, cool. Or if you tell them beforehand, your job is only to scorekeep, you are not making Reeve calls. That's also a really important precedent to set, because there are sometimes where people will let the scorekeepers also lightly Reeve. There are some times where they're like, no, you're only a scorekeeper. Make sure everyone is on the same page beforehand with this information. But that's about everything for the pre-tournament setup. If anyone has any questions before we move on to what you do during the tournament. I love the sound of crickets. It's my... Oh.
So I do have one thing just to point out. That you cover the, you know, if you're setting up a tournament to your champion or your KJMR or JMR, whatever, how do you determine the number of rings that you'll need? How do you
You're so
determine
right,
the
King.
time?
So,
Yeah, how do you determine the time that you need for Iron Warriors.
I have that in my
Honey to
notes, and I totally forgot to say it. So,
Yep.
all right. So, there's a good general air quote rule of thumb for setting how many rings you're gonna have and how much time you're going to give your fighters. So, for example, I'm always a proponent of never have more rings than your Reeves can handle, because having a ring open with only one Reeve is bound to be a bad experience. So, at most, never have more Reeves than your tournament can, or never have more rings than your Reeves can physically handle. However, let's say, all right, for the early bird tournament, I have it set up to where there's probably going to be 2 rings. However, if I have, let's say, 40 people show up for the early bird, obviously that's a lot of people for only maybe 2 rings. So then I go, all right, cool. If I stick with 15-minute Ironmans, people aren't going to be able to really get many fights in with this tournament. So how do I gauge increasing the timer or increasing the amount of rings I have? If you have the flexibility to add more rings, generally for every 10 fighters, for every 10 to 15 fighters, you're going to want to add another ring. Especially when you're seeing a lot of high-level fighters in there. If you're seeing, let's say, you're running a tournament and there are 2 people who are sword knights and everyone else is maybe relatively low. You're going to look at your 2 rings, and for a solid amount of your tournament, you're probably going to see those 2 sword knights in those rings for a long period of time, because they'll be streaking if no one else is there that's of a higher level. If let's say you have 2 rings but there's 8 different sword knights, then maybe that will look a little different, but it'll kind of just be a steady rotation of different sword knights in each ring kind of dominating the space. A nice thing to do is every time you see high-level fighters enter the ring, people that are 7 and up, if you see a good chunk of them, add another ring if you can, or add more time to the timer. Because more time just gives the people who are lower in their warriors, or just anyone who's really looking to climb, more time to get in the ring and actually get their fights in. Because this is when you have 2 little rings and not enough time, that's when you get those instances of, all right, cool, for first, second, and third place, we have 3 people who have humongous streaks, and then everyone else has maybe 3 or 4 kills because they didn't really get enough time in the ring. It gives you a really big point disparity versus your top placing people and literally everyone else. So, good rule of thumb is every time you see 10 people line up, add another ring if you can. If you can't add another ring, at least add another 5 minutes to that timer. So for example, for the early bird, if I want to keep it at 2 rings, but I notice there's 30 people lined up, I'm probably going to increase it to 25 to 30 minutes for those Ironmans. Will it be a longer tournament? Yes. But does that mean that everyone's actually going to get time to fight in the rings, given the fact that there's only 2 of them? Yeah. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Of course, there are situations where sometimes Reeves will also be able to score keep. If someone's a really experienced Reeve and obviously in between fights, that's when they can just quickly jot down the score and then keep moving. They're totally fine Reeving and scorekeeping at the same time. Maybe you can open up a 3rd ring if everyone you're working with is being flexible enough. But that's always something to keep in mind and communicate with your Reeves. Okay, cool. When you're getting people on there, how experienced are your Reeves? So if you're running a local tournament, it's okay to maybe not have the most experienced Reeves who are trying to learn, as long as they are paired with someone who knows what they're doing to teach them. But, for example, for a major kingdom level tournament, like our Weapon Master, we're going to want experienced Reeves, and if someone wants to learn, they're going to be shadowing. They're not necessarily going to be the other Reeve on that ring, because you want to make sure the people that are calling shots and regulating fights and making sure people being safe are experienced to handle stuff, because this is it's a high stakes tournament compared to a local level tournament, because people are fighting to earn their 8, 9s, and 10s in these. So you want to make it a smooth and enjoyable experience for everyone. Okay. I think I covered most of the pre-tournament there.
You mind if I add a little bit to that?
Of course.
So a suggestion that has worked for me and that I would recommend to others, that advice they gave about how many warlords or sword knights you have, I would definitely keep that in mind for local. That way you can have somebody else running inside the ring. But for the Kingdom event, I would highly recommend you keep to your based off of the amount of people you have, because you got to remember the purpose of your tournament. If you have a three and under, you're probably trying to filter some of your fives who are still threes, and you need to get them up and out of the three and under, right? If you have a five and under, you're probably trying to get to see who's trying to move themselves up into that upper echelon and really compete at those kingdom events. But at a major kingdom event, the weapon master, you're supposed to take down those sword knights. You're supposed to take down those warlords. If that's what your goal is, that's what you're supposed to do. So your KGMR, your Reeves are probably not going to cater as much into that situation.
Yeah.
10 to 12 is absolutely my number, and I do the same thing. I raise a couple minutes to up to 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the situation, how hot the day is, and all that. We have definitely ran 30-minute weapon masters for each category, and I added a fifth category. And despite the fact that everybody was tired and people were literally laying on the ground after the last category, which was open, so many people walked up to me and told me it was a great experience. So the other thing I would recommend, just like Leo mentioned, when you have over, let's call it 35, you're going to want a person who's standing in front of that line and organizing them, and you're going to want them to repeat a couple words over and over and over again, and that is tap and go, tap and go, because the difference between a really good experience and a bad one, as Leo mentioned earlier, is when you get in the ring. Even if you lose every single fight, you got in that ring 8 times to 10 times before that category was over. And you didn't get a single kill, but you got in 8 to 10 times over 20 minutes versus sitting in that line and only getting in that ring 4 to 5 times in those 20 minutes. You feel like you're standing in Disneyland and you're waiting 1 hour for Splash Mountain. It's just like, is it even worth it anymore? So you want to really refrain from your people sitting that line for too long. As long as you keep it going, most people tend to have a really good time and keep the flow going. Outside of that, I think you nailed it, Leo.
Yippee! Yeah. So then, when we're venturing into the stuff you want to do during the tournament, as you're structuring things, like, we're gonna maybe not look so much at the open and closed, but if we're gonna look at formats such as our actual, like, major kingdom level tournaments, the Weapon Master and the Crown Tourney. This is where the big during the tournament section counts for a lot, because your during the tournaments is gonna be anywhere from like 1.5 to 2.5 hours, probably, depending on, of course, did your KGMR add another category? For example, I believe, don't quote me on this, that
Hey, Leo.
it's gonna be 5 category. Yes.
Can you zoom in so people can read it better?
Yes. So, for example, if the KGMR has added extra categories, which, if I remember correctly, Cyrus added open, so there's going to be 5 categories at this upcoming Weapon Master? Yes? Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. But at bare minimum, the Weapon Master and Crown Tourney, you're going to have 4 categories, because you're going to have Single Sword, Florentine, Sword and Board, and Great Weapon. Which, obviously, that's going to be a lot, because you're going to have more than 16 people for probably all of these categories, except maybe Great Weapon, maybe. Which, if we're looking at how you would run a Weapon Master by Corpora, if there's less than 8 people, we would have a round robin. That's never going to happen. If it does, I'm concerned. If you have between 8 to 16, it's just bracketed single elimination in best of 3 format. So cool. I take everyone's names, I put them in a random number generator, I make a bracket, they fight. awesome. Or in the most common scenario, when there are 16 or more, when there are more than 16 people, you put them into an Iron Man qualifier. So you have an Iron Warrior, and then once that Iron Warrior is done, you take the top 8 seeded people and you put them into a bracket to then do their best of 3 duels until finals, until you have a winner. So in most of these situations, when you're running a major kingdom level tournament like a Weapon Master or Crown Tourney, you're going to be seeing at minimum 4 categories where you're going to have 3 to 4 Iron Warriors, then going into brackets. So the most common thing that we do is, all right, run through all the Iron Warriors first. And once all of those are done, then we'll get into bracket. Weapon Master is one of those really important things where once sign up is closed, it's closed. You don't just hop in. At other levels, sometimes it is like, you can have your own layer of leniency depending on how strict you want your tournament to be going. But in things like major kingdom level tournament, that could be the difference between whether a category is a bracket or an Iron Man. Which obviously, if at the beginning of a tournament I say, all right, Great Weapon has 14 people registered, that means that there will not be an Iron Warrior for Great Weapon. And then we come around to do Great, and then I go, psych, there's actually 17 people now, get ready for another Iron Man. Then everyone's going to be like, dude, what the heck? I had not paced myself for another Iron Man. So that's when you want to keep that transparency up of, hey, this is exactly how much is going to be happening today. Because also, if other people are jumping into the line, like let's say I'm running single sword and I say, all right, there's like 25 contestants. So our Iron Man's going to be like 20 minutes long or 15 to 20 minutes long, whatever arbitrary number I decide. Let's say 20 minutes. And then I have 10 more people come in. Then all of a sudden, all of these people who are already signed up are getting less and less fights because more people are joining in late. And I'm not going to open up a third ring or add another 5 minutes to this Iron Man that I already told everyone was only 20 minutes. That would be unfair to the people who had signed up on time. So that's going to be something you're going to want to keep in mind in the registration phase and also during the tournament. If people come up to you, you're going to have to be okay with telling them no. Because there will be people who try to go, well, I mean, that's not fair. Like, I didn't know what time it was starting. Yada, yada. That's when you go, no, signups are closed. Sucks to suck. I'm sorry. Womp womp. You have to be okay with putting your foot down in situations in general, both as an organizer and a Reeve. During the tournament, you're going to want to do a couple of things to keep the flow of the tournament going. For example, that person who's doing your handy-dandy pointing at the rings and telling people where to go, that keeps the tournament moving, so that way everyone is getting their time to fight. Another important thing is making sure your Reeves are comfortable and are actively facilitating the flow of the ring. So, for example, Elidibus and Haru are fighting each other in single sword. They Simo. Cool. What should I do as a Reeve? Immediately I'm calling out, all right, Simo, 2 new people in my ring. So right away I'm getting 2 new fighters in. The other those 2 fighters are leaving. And the next fight is going, tap, and go. Because obviously whoever is directing the rings, they don't want to like shoo 2 people over to the ring early if a conflict is still resolving. But the second I go as a Reeve, all right, 1 more person over here or 2 more people over here, and the person leading leading the line can go, all right, 2 people in the green ring, go. That's keeping the flow going. And then also as a Reeve during the tournament, when you're noticing, hey, there's a question here where we're trying to resolve a conflict, and we've been trying to resolve this conflict for a solid, 15 seconds. At this point, if you guys can't come up with an answer, I'm either making a call for you, or you guys are both getting out of the ring, and I'm getting 2 new people in, since you guys can't figure out what happened. During the tournament, you're going to have to be strict and kind of a hard ass, because it is unfair to, of course, other contestants when 2 people are arguing in the green ring for 2 minutes about what happened in their fight. It's that's really cool. You can have this conversation about what happened in the line while you wait to get back in a ring. Because otherwise, you're basically shutting down a ring for 2 minutes. or for whatever period of time, and that's taking away from other fighters. You got to keep the flow going so everyone gets to fight, so you don't feel like, how Krewl'Sol said, like you're waiting in line at Splash Mountain for an hour. And then, all right, you finish your Iron Man. Cool. How much time do you give people in between to hydrate? And then, adios, Fert. Have fun at fighters practice. But how much time do you give people in between each Iron Warrior to get water and cool down for a second before they jump into the next one? Because like I said, it's 4 categories back to back. You're not trying to give everyone, all right, 20-minute intermission before the next one, because then you're going to be there all day. It's like, all right, cool. That's when I tell everyone, all right, everyone take 2 minutes, go hydrate, take a second, get some sugar in you. We are going to be starting the next category at this exact time in these like 2 or 3 minutes. And I set a timer. So it's cool, awesome. That timer goes off, you're in line, we're filling up the rings, we're starting. Making sure that 2 minutes might be a little bit too small. But this is the first number that came to my head. Probably like 4 to 5 minutes. Any more than 5 minutes, you're losing people. Everyone's sitting around like, oh my gosh, when do we get going? We're going to be here all day. So making sure that not just in between fights, but in between categories, you're transitioning smoothly so it's going, so you are not there for 3 or 4 hours in the blazing hot Florida sun. Making sure that your Reeves are, of course, following the standard you set beforehand about how you should be Reeving, making sure your scorekeepers are taken care of, like, oh, they all have chairs, cool. You guys all have waters, because your fighters are in the sun for those 2 hours, so are your Reeves and scorekeepers. Give them water, give them fruit snacks, something. Everyone is out here in the blistering hot sun. And then, as you were running this tournament, one thing that love to do as the person organizing the tournament is, all right, cool. The second that each category is done, I ideally want my scorekeepers to try to either A, tally up the results themselves at the end, and I'll double check them as well, or B, like immediately hand me the results as the organizer so I can go, sweet, this is exactly who's in the bracket. I made the bracket before we even get there. So that way the second we get to bracket, it's run. That's why for like major kingdom level tournaments like the Weapon Master, there is a big team of people. Because let's say you have your 3 rings, you have 6 Reeves, you have 3 scorekeepers, you have 1 person running the line, you have 1 person who's running the tournament. And that person in between each round, and once that next Iron Man starts, they're grabbing the sheets from every scorekeeper, they're combining all 3 of those results, and then they're saying, awesome, I'm going to make the bracket now, so then the second we get there, we're moving straight into it. There's a lot of gears churning, but when you actually communicate with your team, it makes the process infinitely easier. Another thing that I kind of forgot a little bit earlier that I'm going to mention now is it's really important to also cover how you will break ties in your tournament, because this is something that a lot of fighters will ask. For example, especially with your scorekeepers too. If I'm running a tournament and Elidibus and Krewl'Sol have the exact same amount of kills and they each have 18 kills, okay, how do I decide who's in first place and who's in second? Because that's important for how you set up the bracket. Because typically you'll set up the bracket with a seeded style where the first seed fights the worst seed, and then you go like, so it'll be like 1 fights 8, 2 fights 7, 3 fights 6, and 4 fights 5. So it's like the person in first place has the air quote biggest advantage because they are fighting the worst seeded person that's in the bracket. So obviously, if Krewl'Sol and Elidibus both have 18 kills, how do I decide who's in first and what's on second? Well, that's when you look at their streaks. So for Iron Warriors, that's the most common way of breaking a tie. So let's say that Elidibus has his highest streak that he had was a streak of 10 kills. Awesome. I look at Krewl'Sol's. Krewl'Sol's highest streak was only like 5. Sweet. Then obviously Elidibus would be first place because he has the higher streak. Let's say, once again in this imaginary hypothetical, they both have 18 kills and they both have a streak of 10. Both their highest streaks are 10. You have like 2 options you could do here. You could just go to their next highest streak. So, okay, cool. Elidibus had a streak of 10, and then he also had a streak of 8. Sweet. Awesome. Easy. Krewl'Sol had a streak of 10, and his next highest streak was a 5. Cool. Then Elidibus would be in first, Krewl'Sol would be in second. Or, another more common option that people will do is, hey, you guys just do like a best of 3, or like a, you guys will fight each other, and they'll see who gets first seed, who gets second seed. Sometimes the fighters don't care, and they'll just rock, paper, scissors for it. Sometimes they want to fight it out. Honestly, most of the time, it's easiest to go to the next highest streak. So, that will make things a lot easier when you're breaking the ties. The more difficult situation is when you have a tie for like 8th place, and there's like 4 people that might be tied for 8th. Let's say they all got 3 kills, all of them had a 3 streak. There's literally no other way to break a tie. Cool, you can do a round robin system. That's one of the most common methods that I've seen where it's like, cool, everyone fights each other once. Whoever has the highest record there is the 8th seed. Sweet. Typically, there's no tie there after you go through that. So that's how you would really go through tiebreaker situations there. As long as you have established the premise of which you will be breaking ties for your tournament, so everyone is on the same page. So there's transparency and clarity. So people aren't confused when you go, oh yeah, he actually is first place and you were second, even though you had the exact same amount of kills. So they understand why. And they're not like, well, that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. Yada, yada, yada. Excuse me, I had to let out a heinous burp. I muted myself. You're welcome, guys. But obviously, during the tournament, this is definitely the parts where I feel like most of us are most familiar with, because most of us have either participated in a tournament before or run a tournament, or reeved for a tournament before. So, you've seen the what's haps, you've seen the happenings. Obviously, it is super handy to have a setup system for how you're going to set up your brackets beforehand, like printing out your sheets, printing out your score sheets in preparation, so that way you don't have to squint and read someone's heinous handwriting and guesstimate where things are or what they actually wrote. So during the tournament, that's stuff that's very important to keep in mind, but I feel like it is kind of the most straightforward part. The preparation for the tournament is objectively the most difficult part, but once you prepare well, the tournament should run smoothly. Of course, there can be hiccups. For example, let's say, for sure there was one tournament, I think it was, last summer Koro, where we were fighting on the big field, and it just got increasingly hotter, because I hadn't run a crown tourney in that spot in a while. So a lot of us forgot how blazingly hot that spot goes. So cool. In the middle of that tournament, Krewl'Sol made the executive decision of, hey, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick up these rings. We're going to shift over to that more shaded spot. We're going to finish the tournament over there. It was done within like 10 minutes, and then got right back into fighting. Making spot decisions like that, or for example, let's say I'm reeving with Rain, and then Rain goes, oh my god, I have a huge emergency. I have to go. Okay, cool. How am I going to cover for that situation? Because there will be times where you have to deal with spot situations like that. Another important thing to keep in mind during the tournament is, hey, maybe a fighter got super heated during single sword, and there's still 3 more categories left to go. Do you go, hey, cool off for 10 minutes, talk to me first, and then I will gauge if you can hop back in? Do you go, hey, sit out the rest of single, talk to me before Florentine, we'll see if you can hop back in? Do you remove them for the rest of the tournament? Obviously, these are things that you all have to keep in mind as you're running a tournament. You might have to make difficult decisions, especially in the higher stakes tournaments like Weapon Master, where people are competing for their higher levels of the warrior to move themselves up, to push the envelope. So you will have to kind of put your foot down on some things. But the good thing is that gets easier with time, and you're going to have a team of people backing you up and to consult. So if you ever don't know what to do and you're a Reeve, you can look at your head Reeve and go, hey, what do I do? And then they will give you their answer. This is an environment where we're all helping each other have a safe and fun tournament experience. So it's not going to be like, hey, what do I do in this situation where I'm getting yelled at right now? I don't know, figure it out. Sucks to suck. That's not going to happen in a tournament. We're all here to help each other have fun. But does anyone have any other questions or other things to bring up that I may have skirted over a question mark for the during the tournament section? All right, I do in fact love the sound of that. So we're gonna go ahead and move into the post-tournament section. So this is obviously one of the most important parts of running a tournament, because it'd be really cool to have a tournament and say, "Great job, everyone." You guys will never know your scores ever. That would be super cool and nice to do to all of your fighters, right? Obviously not. So after the tournament, you have a moment to breathe, make sure everyone is hydrated, make sure people are getting food in their body, so that way they're not literally dead for the rest of the day. Excellent, cool. This is when we get into this lovely little section here, where we determine the winner for the tournament, which obviously varies from tournament to tournament. If it's just an Iron Warrior, pretty straightforward. Who had the highest amount of kills? If there's a tie, who had the most streaks? If there's still a tie, let's figure that out. For Weapon Master, you're going to have to total up their placements in brackets. So for example, Elidibus is fighting in a Weapon Master. Let's say Krewl and Haru are also fighting in said Weapon Master. Elidibus took first place in 2 categories, and then second and third in the other 2. And then, so whenever he gets first place, we'd go, cool. Elidibus gets 5 points. So let's say he wins single sword and sword and board. Cool. Elidibus already has 10 points. And then he gets second place in another category. That's another 4 points. And then he gets third. That's 3 points. So his cumulative score would be 17. However, when we're initially looking for a winner, we do the highest score, but minus their lowest scoring category. So for the initial placement, Elidibus would have 14 points. Yippee! Sparkle, sparkle. Let's say Krewl'Sol also has the same thing, where he got second place in the other 2 categories, or he got first place in the 2 other categories, he got second place in one, and let's say he got 5th in the other one. Cool. So when you're looking at it, first, him and Elidibus are going to have the same score. They're both going to have 14. In the event they're tied, you'll add in their lowest scoring category as a tiebreaker. So when Elidibus got 3rd place, but Krewl got 5th, once you add their scores back in, Elidibus is going to have 17, Krewl'Sol's only going to have 16. Oh no! But that's how you can break a tie there. Let's say, hypothetically, Krewl and Elidibus have the exact same score. Like, Elidibus took first in single and sword and board, and then Krewl took first in Florentine and Great, and then in the opposite categories, they each took like second place. So their scores are exactly the same. By Corpora, all tied competitors will fight another round in the main 4 melee categories. So not the additional ones that you could add, but they'll fight another round of single, sword and board, Florentine, and Great. I have never personally seen that happen. Do I think it would be really cool to witness? Yes. But I've never seen that happen. But this is why it's really important, for after the tournament, making sure you have your scores for the bracket done as soon as possible. Because during the tournament, that's why you're going to want to be doing the scores as they come in. So the second single sword finishes, I should have that information right in either my spreadsheet or whatever thing I'm writing it on. So that way, the second that now sword and board is done, I put that down too. So then the second all the brackets are done, I look and I go, all right, cool. Elidibus has 17 points. Krewl'Sol has 17 points. Oh god, let's add in the lowest. They both still have the same score. What do I do now? Excellent. I have them fight. Doing it as soon as possible versus, let's say I put off doing the scoring until like 6 p.m. right before court for some reason. Never do that. Let's say I put it off until 6 p.m. right before court, and then I do the math and I go, oh, snap. They are perfectly tied. Well, excellent. They're perfectly tied, and Krewl'Sol's in the kitchen, and Elidibus is getting everyone together for court, and how am I going to get the 2 to fight each other? This is horrible. What do I do? Do I just not announce the results at court? Do I just go, oh, whoopsie daisies, my bad, guys. I guess we'll have the fights first thing in tomorrow morning. No, do not do that. Do the scores the second they come in. It will make your life so much easier. Do not procrastinate. I am begging you, please God. So doing the numbers is insanely important to do as quickly as possible. And also you will feel so much better because then it will be done and you don't have to worry about it. Random thing, I love to do this for all of my tournaments. I don't like to tell anyone who won until court because I think that's more fun. Personally, I just think it's neat. You don't have to do that. Some say it's a little cruel. Meanwhile, other people are like, I love that. So take it as you will. But realistically speaking, make sure the results are announced at a reasonable time. Whether that's at court or maybe you go up to the winners beforehand and you go, hey, by the way, you got first, you got second, good job. But they will also be announced at court. That's also perfectly acceptable. But make sure that the results are public information. And then let's say, all right, cool. I finished scoring all the brackets. I haven't done the breakdown for every individual fighter that was in my tournament. That takes time. It is okay to take a second and go, all right. As for everyone else who participated in in the tournaments today, if you want your full detailed breakdown of your scores, I'm going to be putting it all into a spreadsheet. The results will be posted within a week, giving your fighters who were participants a reasonable time frame for when they will get all of their information. Because why would a fighter care so much about their streak if they didn't win the tournament? Well, my friend, there's this really neat thing called Orders of the Warrior. And in order to get awarded your next Orders of the Warrior, you either have to win tournaments, or if we look at our handy-dandy rules of play, there are very strict guidelines for, if you streaked in your... Why is this not... Where is... What? Work? You want to work so bad. Where... Why are you like this? You can do this. You can do this, Google. I know you can. Okay. No, it's towards the bottom. There we go. All right. So, there's this very neat thing called Orders of the Warrior, which surely none of us have ever heard of, where... Of course, if you're winning a tournament, hey, cool, you get an Order of the Warrior. Or if you get consecutive wins, which is really important for a lot of these fighters trying to get up in ranks. Because let's say, for example, I am at my third Order of the Warrior. To get my next one, I have to win 9 matches in a row. I might not win the whole Weapon Master because, I'm at 3 Orders of the Warrior. Realistically speaking, I might maybe bracket in something, which would be really cool. I might not be winning a whole Weapon Master, because I'm at 3 Orders of the Warrior. Me winning Weapon Master? Million fucking years. However, if I know I did a solid job at single, then when those results get posted, I can go, hey, I get to look, and then I show my local Monarch and champion in my GMR, hey, look, when at the Kingdom Weapon Master, I had a streak of 9 kills in single sword. Awesome. For winning 9 consecutive matches in any tournament format, I now get my next Order of the Warrior. So, it's very important to have those results for people. That's just why doing the numbers after the tournament is one of the most important parts. Because obviously, it's cool, the people who obviously won the Weapon Master, they already know what they got. They know what they're getting. But for everyone else who participated, those numbers are really important. Because also, people want to track their progress. Because they might not hit their next Order of the Warrior. I might not get my 11 consecutive kills for my 5th. But I might go, hey, last time I only got 4 consecutive kills in Sword and Board. And this time, I got 7. That's really good progress. Because that's more than last time. So, having these numbers for people is important. Because not only are you going to be awarding people warriors, but you might also be awarding people Orders of the Griffin. Which, this is something I love to tell all my Reeves beforehand, is, hey guys, keep an eye out for Orders of the Griffin. Where are you at? Which, as I hope a good amount of us know, and I don't know why it's taking so long to load, there we go. Orders of the Griffin are important because it commemorates someone's courage, chivalry, and honor on the battlefield. Honor is incredibly important when you're giving out awards. Because let's say someone got 9 consecutive kills in a tournament, but they were sloughing. And they were generally dishonorable throughout the tournament. Cool. You might give them their warrior if, like, they still did earn it, like, no Reeve called them on it, the scores are official. You might not give them a griffin, though. But if someone is being incredibly honorable, for example, like, Krewl'Sol has always been a really good honorable fighter on the field. So let's say, like, Krewl's in the Weapon Master, and he doesn't get enough kills for his next warrior. However, in every fight he was in, he was incredibly honorable, he was courteous to the other person, awesome. We might honor him with his next Order of the Griffin. So that's a really nice thing to let your Reeves know before the tournament, so they can make little notes. Like, I know that oftentimes as a scorekeeper, I would write a G next to someone's name when I was noticing they were being very honorable. Or if a Reeve tells me, hey, can you, like, mark on your notes, like Elidibus is being really honorable. Sweet. That way, later, when we're breaking down on the numbers, we can look at it and go, oh, well, this person did a good job and they were super honorable, so on top of their warriors, let's give them another griffin too. Not only are the fighters important to award after these, because obviously they strutted their stuff, they did their fights, they deserved the awards they got their griffins, they got their warriors, awesome. What happens now for the Reeves? Because obviously the person running the tournament, the Reeves running the tournament, the scorekeepers, they're taking however long this tournament takes out of their day to run this tournament for other people to have fun safely. So that's when, as a tournament organizer or as another Reeve, you're going to want to, like, put in the recommendations and also recognize your Reeves with either roses for the service that they are providing to other people, or obviously if someone has been, like, a really honorable Reeve for a consistent amount of time, you could even put them in for, like, a recommendation as a walker in the middle, stuff like that. But it's really important to not only recognize the people in the tournament, but the people running the tournament. So when you get to the point of, hey, you're running and organizing tournaments, whether it's your job as, like, a local GMR or champion, or Kingdom GMR or Kingdom champion, you're going to want to make sure that your Reeves are also feeling appreciated. Because if someone's been Reeving for, like, if someone Reeves for you for, like, 6 hours, and you just give them a high five, and that's it, like, yeah, they will feel nice because you thanked them. But you know what else feels also nice? Being like, also, here's a rose. Thank you for dedicating hours of your time at this event to helping the event run smoothly. It's important to recognize Reeves, because that has been a continuous thing where sometimes Reeves go a bit unrecognized. That's why at, like, the last event, Grokt made all of those Reeve sticks for people. Because he was like, hey guys, I see you. Your work does not go unrecognized. We appreciate you. Here you go. I also saw that Jinx had a question in the chat, so let me read that real quick. So, question for chat. Can you still earn another Order of the Warrior if you are waiting to be awarded one? Technically, I have two, but I have not been formally awarded the second one yet. Would I still qualify for a third if I meet the requirements during a tournament? Yes. So, like, for example, if we're looking at the requirements for your third Order of the Warrior, if you are fighting in a tournament and you hit your 7 consecutive matches for your third, or whether it's you win, like, take third in a barony level or winning a Shire tournament, cool. You hit that requirement. You can still be awarded for that. It's not like you are not allowed to... I won't even say jumping the ladder, because, like, if it's literally just you're getting your second Order of the Warrior, it just hasn't been physically handed to you yet, that's not necessarily jumping the ladder. But once you qualify for it, you can be awarded for it. So, if that answers your question. I think I answered that properly. Okay, cool. But yeah, honestly, like, in terms of running tournaments, I will say the most stressful part, at least for me, is always the preparation. Because once you're there and all your Reeves are standing next to you and your scorekeepers, and you have everything set up, then it's, alright, now that I've gotten all the big legwork out of the way, we could just do the tournament, Reeve, yada yada, we move on. Sweet. And then I see it to sit down in the nice, cool, air-conditioned cabin and crunch the silly little numbers and put them all together, and then I'm done. It's awesome. It is the best process. I love it. I love doing it. So I promise it's not as scary as it looks, And also, like, this Friday, I'm going to be running the 2 tournaments that will be happening on Friday. If you are an experienced Reeve who would like to Reeve, or if you want to Shadow Reeve, you want to score keep, or afterwards, when I'm crunching the numbers, if you want to look at my process for doing it, my process for doing it's a little weird because, like, I know we have technology. I still like to write everything down and have it on my computer because I'm paranoid that somehow I'm going to delete it. And then I take pictures of literally every single paper as well as they get handed to me because what if it gets blown away? What if water spills on it? I have like 3 copies of everything for tournaments because I'm like, if I lose something, I'm cooked. It's done. Like, imagine I finish single sword, someone hands me the paper, and I don't take a picture of it, and someone spills water on it, and now it's illegible. What do? Cool, guys, let's redo all of single sword. No, that's not what we do. So, having backups for your backups, I cannot stress this enough. It makes everything so much easier. I promise. But if anyone has any questions, like, that's kind of my big spiel for today. This one's kind of a lot of a word vomity class because I don't have... I'm probably going to make like a little video that's like, hey guys, you want to know how to read a tournament? Crash course in 10 minutes. But for now, this is the in-detailed word vomit of how you run a tournament. If anyone wants to unmute if they have any questions or anything. All right, Jinxon, I think I got all my questions out. You are not being a pest. I promise. I also encourage you ask questions. And also, if there's anything that, like, you just have a question about in terms of Reeving, now is a good time to ask, because, of course, we're about to go into mid-rain. I hope everyone's excited and hit the going button and prepaid. I'm not prepaid yet. I'm going to be doing that today. But, don't be like me. Buy your ticket. It's because I'm a procrastinator, but...
Good rule of thumb, don't be like Leo.
Yeah, good rule of thumb. Do not be like me. Be like Krewl. Alright, cool. Awesome. I'm gonna take the crickets as a OMG yay. Yeah, also Krewl is in fact my belt brother, so Krewl is also never a pest. I feel like I'm kind of the pest of the belt line, but you know, to each their own.
I'm very much the pest. I'm surprised you put up with me.
I'm bold of you to assume it's difficult. Like, thank you guys for coming to the class, though. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.